Yeah, okay. I think it's better if I mute myself before doing the intro, actually, on OBS. So, welcome back to the Winter Osu Mania Grand Slam. No, there's no tournament in the intro. There's just Winter Osu Mania Grand Slam tournament, I guess, in the intro. Welcome back, anyways, for the Mappool showcase of the semifinals. We are back to WOG, and we are WOGing as best as we can. There was a lot of WOG during this weekend, but we are back for some more difficult maps. And I think the players who were eliminated during those quarterfinals might feel very lucky to have been eliminated, seeing what we have concocted for you all, for y'all, the players in these semifinals. Like, speaking of eliminated players just now, I welcome Sparky to the commentator's booth. How are you?
Doing pretty good, despite the fact that I was literally the last L of the quarterfinals weekend. There's no rest for the weary, literally, from commentary to playing, back into commentary. And like you mentioned, it's like I don't know what to expect going into the semifinals map pool, but low-key kind of glad, because my scores were kind of low, and I usually fall off around quarterfinals, so semifinals would have actually put me in a nursing home, honestly.
Yeah, honestly, I saw glimpses of your match, and you did actually pretty well in terms of physicality, like sustaining the physicality during quarterfinals. I think you did pretty well, and I think like both you and Saimitsu were just maintaining the physicality pretty well, but seeing the jump from quarterfinals and to semifinals, yeah, I'm a little bit scared.
Well, you're the one that holds all the cards in this situation. Full disclosure, I still don't know what we're about to see here as we begin the semifinals Mappool showcase. I imagine we're keeping it best of 11, so still going to have 7 rice, 4 LN, 3 hybrids, and the tiebreaker.
Exactly. We are keeping the same structure as before, starting with rice number 1, that is going to be the jump stream based pick.
Alrighty, so bumping up the BPM from, I believe, a flat 200 to 214 here, another uprated chart. But we're starting to get some new things here. Was it new things, same as the old things? Basically, very one-hand trilly type of jump stream chart here.
Oops! I caught the wrong button. Take two.
You don't want to show it off. It's too much for the players, but no, we're gonna get right back on into it. Take 2, mulligan here. You're batting 1,000 right now, Pat.
Yeah, like
you didn't even introduce yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, the thing is, I went Alt plus F. No, not Alt plus F4. What am I saying?
Like, you were gonna close up.
Yeah, I was gonna close it. Like, yeah, I did Alt plus F4 to change the scroll speed instead of just F4. Like, I'm not used to doing showcases. Actually, that was really funny.
That was incredible. But yeah, getting into the map itself. Yeah, like I was mentioning before, just a slight increase to the overall BPM, and this one, in comparison to the this weekend's chart, very one-hand trilly. I'm starting to notice here, especially on that right hand, you start to see those little 3-note patterns. Does eventually fluctuate over to the left hand, but this one might give players a bit of an issue if they're not used to those consistent like 3-note galloping patterns when trying to navigate through the jump stream. Thankfully, no real essence. I was about to say no split trills, but there was actually a transition into some split trills there as we continue on through into the middle half.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that is pretty much the essence of this map. Pretty much vocally patterned. And thank you, Kiras, by the way, for the custom map. Actually, that was specifically mapped for the semifinals. And yeah, 200 BPM from 214 BPM, especially with this patterning, is a substantial jump going from 200 BPM tropical. I forgot the name.
Tropical April.
Okay.
I remember the April part. You remember the tropical part. We put it together.
Yeah, teamwork. Teamwork. Let's
go. Makes the dream work. But last quarter of the chart coming through here, you get very few breaks in this map overall. Thankfully, you don't have that many like hand stream patterns to really contend with. It's really just like single note streams with the occasional jumps here and there, but maintaining that foundation of the one-hand trills that I was mentioning earlier. So, I mean, if you were comfortable with Tropical April, you're probably going to be comfortable with this as well, because that was hard in its own right, even with the lower BPM. There were some transitional moments that could catch you out if you weren't too careful. So, and we'll see how players do on this one.
Yeah, I feel like going from quarterfinals to semifinals, we're really starting to shift the consistency / accuracy elements of those Rice ones into really tests of physicality, like actual tests of physicality. Because like I think the remaining players in semifinals were quite able to handle 200 BPM Tropical April, but Rolling Girl 214 BPM is another story, I feel like.
And moving right along, we'll present Rice 2 here.
That one is a banger, by the way. So introducing this so-called banger, Bullseye, that is a pretty recent, fairly recent, I want to say. I think it comes from 2023, which isn't characteristic from like picks from 2016 or 2015 or what gives. But anyways, this is going to be the dump oriented chart, and that is not necessarily going to be only speed oriented. There's a fair amount of technicality involved in Bullseye, but yeah, like most of what you're getting here is mostly like coming from the vocal dump, like a very freeform dump, as Felix Spade so aptly puts in the description. But yeah, this is also a very stern test of physicality, and compared to Loretta, which is what this is most comparable to, this is a substantial jump from going from Loretta.
Yeah, very Grace Note Flam heavy, similar to what we have been seeing from this like range of like Rice 2 to like Rice 5 charts. And starting things off, I mean, you have moments where you're having to transition from this like 1/4 patterning to some really fast flam patterns. These bursts come through basically in perpetuity as it rains down, and I feel like I say this every weekend when we get to these more free-flowing, like you mentioned, vocal dumpy charts. If you're a player that needs like a solid downbeat foundation to really base where you're going to start pushing, this one might have moments where you'll find yourself dropping either 300s or 200s in worst case scenarios as you try and figure out where you're supposed to speed up and slow down, because there really isn't that much of a tell to give you something to listen for. So it'll be interesting to see who decides to go into this particular chart. I imagine those that enjoyed stuff like Loretta or like Iambic are going to maybe lean towards this one as a pick to use in their match.
Yeah, also the worst might also be kind of close to the orientation of this map. Also, by the way, this the difficulty that is going to be picked for Bullseye is going to be the cut and edit that was done for, I believe, another tournament. I do not know which one. It's pretty much not been used in recent tournaments anyways, I don't think.
Yeah, so be sure to practice the right one. Don't want to strain too much. Just 2.5 minutes.
Yeah,
we can move on to Rice 3.
Yeah, although like the full version is also just a banger, so if you want to play that one, then feel free. So Rice number 3 is gonna be also a pretty physical chunker. This is going to be We Own the Night by Dance Gavin Dance. Also a pretty Logan core song choice, if I dare say so. So Rise number 3 is going to be a little bit more, I guess, speed jump stream oriented, but it is pretty long, clocking in at 3 minutes and 25 seconds. And here we do get, I believe it is 240-ish light jump stream.
Yeah, and I mean, based on what I'm seeing here, we see those speed ups, the slowdowns kind of alternating as these streams begin to rain down. And this one might be the better analog for the worst in comparison to Bullseye from earlier, where you have these like elongated streams of either single notes or, like you mentioned, light jump stream to read through. Thankfully, the density isn't that ridiculous. You have these interludes in between where you have a chance to kind of rebuild any lost accuracy from those sections. You do have hand patterning to kind of compensate for it, but it's not the most abrasive. I imagine it'll pick up once we get into the next couple of choruses here.
Yeah, like the structure of this song is kind of not super conventional. You get a fair amount of breaks here and there, so like despite the physicality of this pick being pretty high, you do get a fair amount of downtime to recover your stamina. But like the strings of speed jump stream are pretty long, however, so you do have to be pretty careful going into these choruses, especially if those little bursts that kind of clock in to make them very much more physical than this cracked from the quarterfinals Mappool.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of players are probably looking at this like, okay, this doesn't look that hard on the surface, especially if they were ones that were really comfortable on the Rice picks from last weekend. But I imagine getting into it does bear mentioning OD 8.5. So if you were one of those that really liked like Iambic 9, you might want to gravitate towards this one. This is basically just a more aggressive version of it. I know there were some players that were maybe struggling just a little bit, keeping their 300 counts low, those 200 counts from really jumping up as well. So this one might be one to gravitate towards. And we're starting to see the variety begin to develop here in terms of like, okay, you have these longer charts that have like a higher OD that are a bit more physically demanding versus these shorter charts that have like everything condensed into one tiny little package. Along with our, like, dare I say, quote-unquote, bog standard style of picks, the ones that we kind of have come to expect in their usual positions. But as we get through this outro, I mean, it's nothing really stands out as, like, a major pitfall moment. There aren't, like, ridiculous, like, glut patterns or, like, outrageous mini jacks. It's just consistency test of how high can you keep your physicality up.
Yeah, that's pretty much correct. I feel like comparing this to Viscrack was way more technical actually than We Own the Night. And We Own the Night is I feel like it's way more of a standard mixed rice pick to compare with.
But then we can move on to Rice 4.
And you might be familiar with this one, as this one was featured in MWC 2021, I think. So,
making its way here.
Yeah, like it was featured as a qualifier of one or the other qualifiers. So we are in fact providing MWC level qualifiers to 5 digits. Yeah, welcome.
Welcome. If you can do this, maybe try out for your team this year. I say, with the biggest smile on my face. But yeah, as we make our way through this one, I mean, this is very standard fare. If you know Aeolian Carp, I mean, you're very much familiar with what they like to do with these kinds of charts. It's very free form, but not in the way of like vocal dump. It's very much they rely on the music to kind of give you that grounding point. So if Bullseye wasn't your taste of this like aggressively structured type of chart, this might be more your speed, where you can kind of correlate stuff 1-to-1 throughout the chart.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this pick is very much carried by the song choice because, like, the song choice does provide a lot of anchor, I guess, overall anchor to rely on. And but this map is really hard. However, like, the bursts are really clocking in physically, and they're really fast. And I found myself to having trouble to maintain them. Like, especially the ending. The ending is gonna be really spiky compared to the rest of the map, and that ending might cause some reversals, like last-minute reversals.
Yeah, we were already seeing stuff like that during the quarterfinals. So, I mean, players at the end of the rope might struggle a little bit on this chart, but that'd be very fun to see the potential battles as we make our way through this outro. You called it perfectly. Just those incredibly aggressive bursts, very staircase oriented, so you might be able to get away with kind of rolling your hands and praying. But yeah, definitely could see some swings there at the end.
Yeah, like that very last burst is the one I usually break on or drop a lot of accuracy on.
Mm-hmm. But now we can move on to Rice 5, and it's gonna be Breathe.
Yeah, that is going to be a custom map provided to us by Crustbell. So shout outs to Crustbell. Some players coming from Dynescape's Intermediate Cup might remember this song choice coming from early game, and this is another rendition of it, very much more densely patterned. And yeah, clocking in at 126 BPM. This is kind of similar to a kind of mini jacky chord jack. Well, kind of lightly patterned chord jack, sort of, but it's not entirely going to be a chord jack pick.
Yeah, we're saving that, I imagine, for one of our later picks. But if you wanted something that kind of gave you that feeling of having that very chord jack, mini jack focus without it being the dedicated pick, I know sometimes the BPM can be a little off-putting for some people. If you just want those light burst moments where you can kind of have short 126 BPM 1-2 patterning, this might be the pick to go towards. And with the way players have been gravitating towards some of these picks, I can imagine this one might attract a couple of picks in its own right. There are some weird gray snow patterns, some weird flams that occur as the chart continues, and the fact that the snaps change every now and again, you need to be able to start up, slow down. But in comparison to some of the other things that we have seen, this might be considered one of the easier maps, depending on how your Rice playstyle is correlating to.
Yeah, honestly, I was comparing these to a chord jack pick, but it's not entirely a chord jack pick because solely because of those polar rhythms and graces going on in this chart. So this might be a little bit closer in experience to an iambic pick than a straight up chord jack pick, and the chord jack pick is going to come right after this one in the name of Rice number 6.
Yeah, so rolling right on into it. We're pulling out all the stops here. We got Pizza 69, we got Aeolian Carb, we got Whitey now.
Yeah,
It's everybody being represented.
Yeah, that is going to be one of the classics. One of the classic picks. I feel like of the Mappool. So this is a pretty dated chord jack from YT, and clocking it at 125 BPM. That is pretty similar to Breeze's 126 BPM. But however, this is going to be much more standard in terms of snapping, and also like in terms of patterning, it's also going to provide a lot more dense patterning and coordination required to handle those chord jack transitions.
Yeah, you have a lot of 2-note, 3-note chords, even quads at times to read through. And with that BPM increase, I always like to say there's usually a trade-off where it's like BPM increases but density decreases. It's like no, we're just increasing both. Both are gonna get harder. If you're having trouble with Accumulatown with the BPM, this is probably not gonna give you much more to play with. I can imagine this might start catching some bans because we're reaching a BPM where some players might be at their ceiling in terms of comfortability with playing chord jacks. So we'll just have to wait and see there.
Yeah, going from Accumulatown, I think Accumulatown was just about 112 BPM. This clocksing at 125 BPM. So, like, the BPM jump coming from a chord jack standpoint is definitely a substantial jump. It does clocking at similar lengths, however. Like 1 minute and 44 seconds is like not that much. So, it's especially going to require more physicality than stamina.
Absolutely. So I think we only have one more rice chart before we close out that side of the map pool. Let's go ahead and show the players what they're going to be dealing with. I imagine this is in our boss pick. Similar to how things have been going so far.
Yeah, this pick might be funny for some of you at home.
Ah, man, y'all are just finding all we're
Yeah, that is
we're
the
finding
most.
all the MBS picks.
Yeah, that is the most unexpected MBS 3 reuse, by the way. It's like this was used as a Rice tiebreaker in the not in MWC, in MBS 3 Grand Finals. Yeah, this was specifically mapped by Davi in for the Grand Finals of MBS 3, and now we're reusing it as a boss pick in this map pool. So this has a lot of mixed rice patterning. It's like not that technical, but it does get technical, especially in the guitar solo that is upcoming in the later half of the map. But yeah, some of those bursts are still, some of those bursts and anchors can still be pretty terrifying to handle, and this map is also pretty physical as a whole.
Yeah, and if you thought the Billie Eilish song from last weekend was long, we're clocking it at 6 minutes now. We've tacked on another minute.
Yeah, we're going to add another minute in finals, and then another minute in grand finals, and then it's just gonna be mental stamina.
Yeah, at that point, it's like you're just banning it out of courtesy. But no, I mean, with the way players have progressed over the last couple of years, this was terrifying to look at 4 or 5 years ago. Now it's kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I could just use this as like a warm up. Some players were demented enough to say, but as we continue on here, I mean, we see the score that the replay was able to put up. It's like if you're able to maintain the level of consistency needed for a chart like this, because it does wear away at you in one way, shape, or form. If it's not physical, it definitely is mental. You can just find yourself having these little lapses in concentration when things begin to build up and begin to slow down in terms of overall density. I've started to see that when things start to lighten up, that's really when those mistakes begin to happen.
Yeah, honestly, like the song choice itself, like the song itself is very progressive in terms of structure. It's like pretty unpredictable. Like Blooded Science outputs some really interesting and unconventional song structures. So you don't really know what you're expecting. Like you don't really know what you're getting unless you know the song, that is. What you're getting as a next section. So you really have to just stay on your toes. For example, like those mini jacks can be those mini jacks like gluts are pretty chokeable in terms of combo. Like those also triple anchors here and there. That's pretty much everything in this map. And as you can see, like the technicality is kind of lower than some of the other picks, especially like, for example, Fondrome. But yeah, this is the guitar solo I was talking about, and this is probably going to be the peak physicality of this map. And I think this kind of clocks in really to be much harder than what was it, a Bullseye.
Yeah, you start to get these real fast snaps, 1/6, 1/8, all over the place. You're basically handling these streams close to topping out about 300 BPM, but then you transition back into the 200, like 200 BPM 1-2 style patterning with a couple of bursts, little gallops here and there. But it's gonna be a marathon. This is definitely, if not for the physical requirement, just that marathon requirement. And we go back into the second guitar solo. It's a reprise of the first one where you see this like broken jump stream, single note stream style patterning that can definitely catch you out if you're not expecting those transitions. Like you mentioned, this song really doesn't telegraph where it's going to go. So maybe not the most sight read friendly, but I imagine somebody out there is bold enough to try.
Yeah. I feel like coming from quarterfinals Chihiro, I feel like a lot of people have been nailing Chihiro and using it as kind of a consistency check, kind of an accuracy check as well. People were getting really, really high scores on that. However, the synaptic plasticity, I don't feel like a lot of people are going to get really high scores due to the fact that this is really, really challenging to full combo in the first place.
We say that and we're probably just gonna see a full list, full stat sheets of like 980k pluses, I imagine. It feels like we set the bar and players clear it with relative ease, in my experience. So while it is difficult, I imagine the players that are bold enough to go into this or even protect it are ones that feel really confident in their abilities to maintain the consistency required for a pick like this.
And we get one last trap with those mini jacks, and yeah, like as you say, this song does not telegraph what is going on, like right up until the ending. Like we can still get some misses in the ending bursts here and there. It just doesn't end.
Yeah, at this point you're kind of like, when is it going to end? Because we're going back into this like dense jump stream section right at the very end, and it all of a sudden it's just over.
Yeah, it's just over with those really really chokeable split trail patterns as well. Like at the ending, it really does get denser to that degree.
Yeah, but that will do it for the rice section. 7 maps up, 7 maps down. We can move on to the LNs.
And this is going to be LN number 1. Gonna be Envy, brought to us by Bastian. I believe this is ranked. It might be, it might not be. I didn't check beforehand. But it is going to be, in fact, going to be the coordination / release oriented type of pick. And coming from Tokyo Night Flight, from quarterfinals, this is going to be flowing much faster. I feel like Tokyo Night Flight was slow enough that some people might have gotten some trouble in coordinating it due to how slow it is. This one might flow better for some other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've seen a trend historically where as the BPM goes up on these LN type of picks, players seem to find ways to get better scores because of the fact that they're not needing to focus on the release elements as much. They can kind of get away with playing some of these shorter structures like rice notes. That is a very mean trill to transition out of that section, by the way.
Yeah, I feel like I remember this pick from another tournament. I do remember like dealing with those trills here and there, and those trills do really put a heavy strain on coordination as a whole, and this makes this a very bannable but also very protectable pick for people with LN mastery.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some really uncomfortable things going on in this chart. The fact that you have these really long LN anchors with, like I mentioned, those split trills going on, some really interesting anchored patterns to contend with. That is a really good introduction to the LN pool. We can move on to LN2 now.
Yeah, LN2 is going to be more of a kind of physicality density, well, LN physicality that is, oriented pick, and that is going to be a little bit more physically induced than Ravel's pick in quarterfinals. I feel like Ravel's pick in quarterfinals was a little bit more coordination oriented, despite being quite dense still. This one is going to be providing a little bit more physical elements. Clocking in at 186 BPM, this is going to be fairly lightly patterned for a quote-unquote density-oriented pick, but it's still going to provide some density elements, and you start to really see some density elements coming into the semifinals and onwards.
Yeah, and the fact that you're juggling those short 1/4 elements with some of those longer anchors mercifully on some pretty like, it's easy to coordinate when those releases are going to be. It's still based off like that 1/4 grid. So you're not like randomly trying to figure out when you're releasing at certain times. A lot of the releases are a lot friendlier than something like an LN1. Then you get into something like this where you have these long LN strings and you're just inundated with things to do on the other 3 columns before transitioning out of it back into those shorter 1/4 sections. And it'll be interesting to see how players handle those transitional moments.
Yeah, because like in this bridge, it is as you say, a pretty transitional type of map, and Chroma does this pretty well in terms of song progression as well, and this makes this a pretty enjoyable experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might don't take your hands off the keyboard. The other thing Chroma likes to do is these reprisal type things where it feels like the song ends, but you get this like final burst of energy to make it through to the end of the chart, and that's really where you get kind of a culmination of everything that has been going on. And these like we've been saying throughout this chart, there's just so many transitional moments where you go from these coordination sections back into these 1/4 density sections, but that real focus is just nailing the denser moments found throughout the chart.
Yeah, also that last like La Crema pattern, as some commentators like to call it, can be really tricky in terms of coordination in a LN density sense.
Yep, but that will do it for LN2. We can move on to LN3 here.
So this is going to be another ranked map, and correction, by the way, Envy was not ranked, but To the Milky Way was in fact ranked. You can tell that by the leaderboard on the left, because yeah, I just realized that.
So it was ranked, but nobody played it, apparently, but no.
yeah, essentially.
Jokes aside, we move on to LN3. We start to get into these more like wild cardy type of LNs where there's no real like main focus. It kind of just tests every element that you would normally find in an LN chart, and there's a lot of, I always get this wrong, it's shield and reverse shield patterns. Both of Pat, you have more experience with this than I do. When it's the rice note at the end of the LN, what is it referred to as?
Okay, so the regular shields are rice followed by LN, and reverse shields are LNs followed by rice.
So reverse shield patterning was what we were seeing there from that earlier section. A couple, you get into this dense LN coordination section where you're once again finding yourself needing to juggle these longer LNs with the 1/4 structures in between, but this is more like pure density where you're having what is essentially like, I don't want to say jump stream-esque patterns because you're having to do 1 to 2 note anchors in between, but I think this is what folks kind of think of when they hear dense LN.
Yeah, like I feel like this one still has some pretty standard snaps, and like it does lend itself into it does go into density a little bit, but the 168 BPM is a lot more different than 186 BPM density patterns. So the BPM variety might be helpful for some players here.
Yeah, and then we see these reverse shield patterns make their reappearance here. And it feels like this map kind of comes and goes in phases, where you have these like long build-up sections where maybe it's not as dense, but you're needing to focus more on the coordination elements. And then once you get into those key eye sections, that's when you really start to kind of hunker down and need to kind of lock in to ensure that you're kind of sharpshooting your way through some of these denser sections.
Yeah, this is really dense, by the way, because like the structure of this density patterning is like way more heavy-handed than LN number 2.
Yeah, some would even maybe dare trend it towards something like inverse, but it's not really. There's maybe some arguments to be made of as to how far into like that like inverse section or category we venture into towards the end there, but that will do it for LN3. We can move on to LN4.
And this is another blast from the past. And you can figure that out from the mapper named Bye For Now is going to provide us with Mechirushi. And I believe like that is kind of an old classic among LN enthusiasts. And that is going to be a little bit more of a faster coordination element than LN1. And I feel like this one is a little bit more gimmicky in terms of its, I guess, LN or fast LN coordination structure. It's kind of reminiscent of Our Love back in quarterfinals, but with a lot more LNs.
Yeah, if you were one that kind of gravitated towards Our Love from this weekend, this might be the next logical step to take in terms of where you'd want to kind of game plan for your LN picks. It has very much the same like structures in terms of where the LNs are. It has its moments of like high density with like these little rice bursts here and there to kind of give it a little bit of extra flavoring in terms of maybe pushing it towards that like hybrid-esque barrier, but still having enough of an LN difficulty curve to make it more so that the rice isn't kind of overpowering what you're doing. It basically tests some of the lesser talked about LN techniques that you need to be able to play through to make it through a chart like this.
Yeah, like coming from the quarterfinals Mappool, I feel like Mechirushi is going to be the most technical LN pick from all of them. I feel like I think like LN1 is technical in terms of releases, and this one is more technical in terms of rice transitions and just as a whole, the LN gimmicks and the extendedness of the long notes themselves, kind of staggering back and forth in a pretty structured way.
Absolutely. But with that being said, we can move on to the hybrids of this pool, starting with hybrid 1. I believe this is also another ranked chart. It is going to be 1x miss, and I hope nobody finds 1x miss. That would be very unfortunate. But this chart, very difficult to make it through unscathed. There's definitely some very interesting patterning found throughout.
Yeah, by the way, the score that I have, like my 818k there, comes from 2019. I believe it comes from 2019. It's the score I set when I played this for the first time, I think. So, yeah, blast from the past once again.
Yeah, really digging deep. And I forget, does this chart have SV elements found throughout it?
No, it does not.
I
but
don't
it
believe so,
No,
yeah.
It does not have SV, but it has a lot of gimmicks, like non-SV gimmicks. That is, like this map itself is the most really hybrid you'll find on the planet. I feel like.
Yeah, but then you have a lot of these little cooldown sections before you dive back on into those trill elements. And as we begin the next kind of refrain, the buildup happens once again. And I feel like if my memory serves correct, the second half of this chart is basically a mirror of the introduction once you get into that little breakdown section once again, but it just increases the density ever so slightly.
Yeah, it kind of goes into that ki that is pretty similar to the first half, kind of pretty reminiscent with those bursts here and there, and like the quads do put a hamper to the flow itself, the map. Like this map is really rigid, coming from the trills and also like from the chord patterning.
Yeah, I feel like trying to avoid bottoming out when you get into those trill sections, the fact that you have these like really intrusive quads to force you to hit every single key and then immediately bouncing into something just ever so slightly more intricate is pretty mean, to say the least.
Yeah, we'll discover soon where that miss was. It was probably right at the very end.
I just realized what you mean.
Yeah.
The replay name.
Yeah, we're just gonna figure that out. I believe that Logan missed on the very last note. Just have to see that.
There, what is it? Mission accomplished. They did what the song said.
Nice!
There you go. Oh, they worked for that one.
It really works for that one, yeah. Cover break. One miss. I believe like that's also a pick where a lot of people might get one miss, or maybe more.
Maybe more, but we can move on to Hybrid 2 now. Yeah, get some Porter Robinson up in here.
Oh, that's also ranked? We have a lot of ranked maps in this Mappool. That is kind of surprising. I didn't even realize. But I feel like the ranked section is starting to, has started like years ago to become a pretty good source of dumpster diving for lower ranked tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like over the last couple of years, for sure. I remember there used to be a stigma back in like early 2020s where it was like if you found a ranked chart that was used in a tournament, it was kind of like, okay, they really couldn't find anything. But now it's kind of like, okay, I think the onus has kind of shifted a little bit where the kind of things that are making it through the ranking process kind of go through that eye of like, I don't want to say tournament viability, because I don't think that's ever really the aim of the rank section, but it basically, there's so many charts that get made for tournaments that kind of just go by the wayside, that there's been more of a concerted effort to rank those charts because they do deserve to be more than just languishing in a graveyard somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Like coming back to the pick itself, this clocks in at 98 BPM, so the LN patterning is gonna be a little bit reminiscent of Tokyo Night Flight's slowness. So some people might have trouble like coordinating some of the longer LNs in this map, like just going back and forth. And when you add on the technicality of the graces and the bursts here and there, this makes this a pretty difficult hybrid. Like it's a fairly substantial jump coming from quarterfinals.
Yeah, if the LN charts from earlier didn't give you that, didn't scratch the itch of where are these maps that have like these staggered start stops, the ambiguous releases, this is the chart that you want to gravitate towards. You have so many, as I mentioned before, just hanging release times where you're not you're not able to put it on like a 1/4 grid at certain times, especially once the density begins to ramp up. Sure, you have these slight coordination sections where you do have like 1/4 releases, but even during those, you're following this vocal line that kind of determines where you're releasing at certain times, that you really do need to pay attention to where those releases are when they do end up popping up, because that could be a real point of contention if you're up against somebody that has equal ability on this type of chart.
Yeah, and mind you, this map clocks in at 3 minutes and 18 seconds, so it is also a substantial bump from a song length perspective, but it is a vibe. It is a vibe. Porter Robinson is always a vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely one where you would hope that it's a comfortable chart to read through so that you can kind of get a chance to listen to what's going on, but unfortunately not going to be the case. This is very much a difficult chart to read through, and a nice even 3000 combo to play with. It'll be very nice to see who decides to contest on that one, but there is only one map left in the regular map pool before the tiebreaker. Here is Hybrid 3.
And to those of you who know the mapper, once again, a ranked pick. I don't know how we do this, but yeah, it might actually. Well, nah, it's actually ranked, I think. But yeah, Lud provides some really gnarly SV hybrids, and the SV difficulty is gonna bump. It's gonna be bumped up from quarterfinals, and we are starting to see some actual like SV, like reading SV elements.
Yeah, it's like, so while you're not getting a dedicated SV pick, you are getting... You're not being hamstrung by the fact that we need to respect that it has to be 0 SV. And, I mean, there are definitely some players in here that are very much SV enthusiasts. So they see something like this where you do have like some really aggressive teleports that can cause you to mess up where your LN releases are, at least for the moment. I could see this being like an instant protect for some players left in this tournament.
Yeah, especially since this hybrid in particular is going to be putting an emphasis on the mini jacks as well. And this is where you can see like the 152 BPM mini jacks sell in. But yeah, if you're familiar with jacks but not necessarily familiar with slow jams, stutter SVs and the like, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a wild card pick. It's a super wild card pick in that regard.
Yeah, it's been really interesting seeing this particular map category develop throughout this tournament, where it was like, okay, you have these hybrids that have this SV element, and really just taking it and running with it at this point is kind of like, where do we go from here with regards to what hybrid charts with SV can potentially do? Because we're not going to get a dedicated SV pick, but I feel like we're starting to reach a point where some players will just begin to like snap ban this just to avoid playing it.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see like what the trend on protects and bans are going to be on this particular Hybrid 3, because this Hybrid 3 is starting to set itself apart from the regular picks due to the amount of SVs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a welcome thing. I like having variety in these types of map pools, but there's only one map left. It is going to be the tiebreaker for the semifinals, and the tiebreaker for this round is going to be...
So this is a pretty old name in the community. Like this mapper name might remind some people of the old days of 4DM, for example. Curiosity. I feel like a lot of Curiosity maps have been used, especially towards the 4DM1 or 4DM2 era. And this tiebreaker, Feeling Sky, the 200 Step Self remix. don't remember where this has been used, but I feel like this has been used in pretty old tournaments.
Yeah, bringing back a blast from the past. Definitely before my time, at the very least. But as we get things underway, a nice introduction to kind of get you close to that 400 combo cap. You can make it with relative ease. There are some transitional patterns that can catch you out if you're not too careful, but definitely nothing as difficult as what you've been contending with in the Mappool overall so far. But there's still plenty of time to change that. This one does cross over that 6-minute mark here.
Yeah, this is probably one of the longest tiebreakers we've had. Maybe the longest, in fact. Maybe not actually. I feel like round of. Wait, did we have a round of 64 in this tournament?
Yes.
Oh yeah, maybe a round of 64's tiebreaker in this tournament has been longer. Like Blackout, the alternative was pretty long if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and that was also a pretty classic style of map. So as we begin this build-up, you get these core jack oriented patterns, the prototypical build-up before diving into the drop, and you get some really aggressive mini jack patterning, some extra impact LNs, still on that 1/4, 1/2 style grid, but then you get the reverse shields and the shield patterning as well to kind of ensure that you're not just quickly releasing to get your way out of those mini jacks. Some trills as well, some abrasive bursts before transitioning into the next third of the map.
Yeah, like those mini jacks clocking at 200 BPM, and I think this song is at a consistent 200 BPM. There aren't any like switch ups or like BPM changes to speak of. But yeah, those bursts here and there, they might be rolly in nature, but they do really kind of mess up your flow. And going into a tiebreaker situation into this type of pick, you've already played like 10 picks before. This is your 11th pick, and the stamina must be running low at this point.
Yeah, you do get a pretty nice break at the end of that section to kind of recoup any potential accuracy loss if you broke combo during that last section. Chance to maybe get back up over that 400 combo cap, reestablish yourself just a little bit. Bit of light jump stream to get us into the back half to start things off. It's still in the build-up, even before the build-up. I feel like with Camelia's songs, you kind of have those telegraphed sections littered throughout where you kind of understand where the map is going to start to go, and you get into this LN, pure LN section.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to have some slow LNs sprinkled into to the break sections, because the slow LNs might be the parts where people like Antalf might miss before going into the actual the last KI, where typically Camellia kind of spikes up and goes into a full-on LN density section.
And sure enough, you have that jump stream transition into a pure LN section, very much on that 1/4 grid, so not having to deal with that much of a release element, but trying to coordinate everything here as we begin the build-up into the next section.
Was that an SV? I think that was an SV actually. We've got some SVs in our tiebreaker, by the way. That's a bonus.
As a bonus, just a jump scare, just somewhere in there. Somebody's gonna be hyper focused, just completely locked in. They get the SV, and next thing you know, they just spike it completely and transition on into the rest of the chart, knowing it's like, damn, I should have practiced this.
Yeah, I feel like I remember some footage of old 4DMs where an entire team would miss on the SV transition because, of course, people would side tree the tiebreaker. It is a tiebreaker after all. And like in the old days, we had SVs in tiebreakers, of course. And that led to some really funny... Oh, whoa, this patterning's like really surprising coming from perhaps 2020 20 map.
Ooh. Okay,